everybody? It's JT Sports. I'm actually guys with another video. This video, I'm here with my Kansas City Chiefs 2019 training camp preview. Going to be previewing the Kansas City Chiefs training camp, giving you guys some players to look out for and some things and position battles to watch for the Kansas City Chiefs when their training camp begins. So before I begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe. I upload NFL videos and NFL content daily. And let's get into it. So the Kansas City Chiefs going into training camp. It's pretty interesting because we don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. One day is saying that he's going to be suspended. Another day is saying that he won't be suspended. He won't miss any games. Something crazy. So I don't know what's really going on with that whole entire situation. So I'm a little bit confused what's going to happen with Tyreek Hill. But for now, we're just going to say that he's going to end up playing Week 1. So that takes a huge burden off the Kansas City Chiefs if Tyreek Hill is able to play Week 1, for the fact that the biggest question this off season before we were starting to get the latest news on Tyreek Hill was who is going to end up being that guy who steps up when Tyreek Hill isn't able to play. And a lot of people were saying Miko Hardman. I think it's kind of hard to, put all that pressure on a rookie like a Miko Hardman. So I think a guy who I'm going to be looking forward to seeing step up is Sammy Watkins, because simply for the fact that Sammy Watkins is getting paid a lot of money and he hasn't really played up to his contract. I mean, this guy hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since I was in middle school, and I'm graduated from high school now. So I mean, Sammy Watkins is a guy who needs to step up, and I think he should be able to step up. Last season he had a few big games, but other than that, from aside from a couple of big performances, he hasn't really did that much. So Sammy Watkins is a guy who I'm really looking forward to seeing this off season more than anybody on any team in the NFL, because I think Sammy Watkins is the player that has a lot to prove this season other than the quarterbacks. If you want to look at a non-quarterback player who has a lot to prove, then that guy, in my opinion, is Sammy Watkins. This guy hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since I think 2014, which was his second year in the NFL. So Sammy Watkins is a guy who I think needs to step up, and I'm really going to be keeping tabs on him throughout training camp for the Kansas City Chiefs, because he's a solid wide receiver, but with the money that he's getting paid, he's not getting paid to be solid. He's getting paid to be a good, great wide receiver. He hasn't really lived up to his contract. So the second thing we're going to talk about the position battles, mainly on the defense side of the ball. Now, Kansas City Chiefs, they changed from a 3-4 to a 4-3, so they have a lot of competition there. First at They have competition at the linebacker spots. All three linebacker spots they have competition at. That first linebacker spot, we have Anthony Hitchens, Darren Lee, and Damian Harris. Now, mainly, I think it's just going to be between Anthony Hitchens and Darren Lee. Darren Lee was a guy who they got in the offseason, a trade with the New York Jets. Didn't really give up a lot to get him. I think Darren Lee is very solid, does a lot of things well. Anthony Hitchens is also very solid as well. So it's going to be interesting seeing who starts at that linebacker spot for the Kansas City Chiefs between Anthony Hitchens and Darren Lee. Damian Harris is a guy who I wouldn't count out, but I'm not really expecting him to have that huge of an impact when it comes to this positional battle. I think he's a guy who may touch the field this season for a few downs or something like that, but I don't really think he's going to be that name to really take a notice in this competition. I think it's mainly just between Anthony Hitchens and Darren Lee. Next up, we got to look at the middle linebacker position. Reggie Ragland, you got Darius Harris there, and you got Robert McCray. Reggie Ragland, I think he's okay linebacker at that middle linebacker spot. You also got Darius Harris there as well. So interesting competition. Also, a lot of people on the Kansas City Chiefs blog websites and websites I was looking at, the team reports, they were also saying don't count out Robert McCray. He can end up having a solid impact on his Kansas City Chiefs defense as well. But I think mainly we're just going to see Reggie Ragland and Darius Harris battle it out. But I mainly think that Reggie Ragland is going to end up winning that starting middle linebacker spot. Then at the last linebacker spot, we got the last linebacker spot that actually has some competition. We have Darian O'Daniel versus Jeremiah Tachu. It's going to be interesting seeing who starts at that other linebacker spot for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jeremiah Atachu, he's a pretty solid linebacker, and also Darren O'Daniel as well. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see who starts at the linebacker spot. The Kansas City Chiefs, they really reloaded at the linebacker position. They made a lot of offseason moves, got rid of a lot of guys who've been with the organization for a while, guys like Justin Houston, who's been around for a while. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this defense ends up looking like with basically a whole new identity on the defense side of the ball. They got a lot of new players. They really got a lot of linebacker depth, and it doesn't really matter who ends up starting at those linebacker positions. I think the linebackers that they have in total, I think all of those linebackers could end up having a solid impact on this Kansas City Chiefs defense. And I think this Kansas City Chiefs defense, I might have maybe overlooked them just a little bit because I think this Kansas City Chiefs defense, after doing research for this video, it really looks a little bit better than what it did last season. Last season, the defense always folded when they had to end up winning the game, like we saw in the AFC Championship game when Tom Brady just drove down the field with no effort. So this defense really opened my eyes a little bit. I'm starting to trust a little bit more in this Kansas City Chiefs defense. I was overlooking them a lot. I wasn't really giving them a lot of credit before I started doing research for this video. So this Kansas City Chiefs defense looks way better than what I was giving them credit for. So the next position battle that we have on the defense side of the ball is at that defensive tackle position. You got Derek Nanadi, excuse me if I mispronounced that name, and rookie Kalen Sanders. Now a lot of people think that Kalen Sanders could end up winning that spot at that defensive tackle position, and it's going to be really interesting because that guy has a lot of talent, a lot of high upside. So it's just going to be a matter of who the Kansas City Chiefs prefer to start at that position. Are you going to go with experience or are you going to go with youth? So it's going to be interesting. But I think Colin Saunders, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up starting that defensive tackle over Derek Nanadi. Then that defensive end position, you have Alice Okafor and Emmanuel Ogbah. So it's going to be interesting seeing who ends up starting there. Emmanuel Ogbah is a guy who has a lot of potential, and it's going to be really interesting there. Now we move to the offensive side of the ball. That center position is really big because they lost Mitch Morse to free agency. He signed with the Buffalo Bills. So they have Austin Reuter, who started a few games last season. You got rookie Nick Allegretti. He's 6'4", 310 pounds, scored 42 out of 50 on the Wonderlic test. So that makes him a good fit for that Andy Reid offense because Andy Reid normally likes players who really have high IQ and stuff like that because his offense is really complex and stuff like that, what he likes to do on the offense side of the ball. So that's a pretty good fit as well. They also drafted him in the later rounds as well, I think. So it's going to be really interesting seeing who ends up starting at that center position. But if I had to choose, I would choose Austin Reuter. I think he's pretty solid there. He also has some experience as well. It's always hard to try to start a guy who you draft in the later rounds of the NFL draft over a guy who has experience and things like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds during training camp. But I'm going to go with Ryder to end up starting at that center position just because he has experience there. And when he was starting, the offense didn't really look like it missed the beat there. So I think he's going to end up starting there. But I think that's just a position that I had to address on the offensive line. I think that was something that had to be noticed. You can't really overlook that. Then at the halfback position, we got Damian Williams, you got Carlos Hyde, you got Daryl Williams, you got Darren Thompson. Now, a lot of people think Damian Williams is going to end up being that number one halfback since the Kansas City Chiefs gave him an extension. He played really well last season when they signed him later on in the season and did really perform really well, exceed a lot of people's expectations. So he's projected to be the RB1 for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I don't think you can end up overlooking Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde was a guy last season, bounced around a little bit. With the Cleveland Browns, he wasn't that bad. The thing that held him back was his yards per carry wasn't really that good. Was on the Jacksonville Jaguars, didn't really do that much there. So with the Kansas City Chiefs, with a better offensive line, I think he can end up having a significant role with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him and Damian Williams split carries this season, and that's going to be something to look forward to. And also a guy who I really like a lot is Darren Thompson. He's a guy who has been impressing this Kansas City Chiefs coaching staff all off season. So I think he's a guy who will also find a way to get involved in this offense as well. So my players to watch. Juan Thornhill, the safety out of Virginia, who they drafted this year. He's a guy who a lot of people have a lot of high expectations for. I think he can end up being really, really good. Also, you got Miko Hartman there at that wide receiver spot. A lot of people are expecting big things out of him in this Kansas City Chiefs offense in his rookie season. And I think in that Andy Reid offense, he can end up being very good. And a lot of people think he can end up winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. So it's going to be really interesting seeing that. Then Sammy Watkins, like I talked about earlier, Sammy Watkins, I think he's probably the not the only. I think he has the most pressure on him out of all the non-quarterbacks. So basically, all I think he has the most pressure on him this season because he's getting paid a lot of money and he hasn't really lived up to it, and he hasn't really been that good since his second year in the NFL when he was playing with the Buffalo Bills. Then the last guy is Darren Thompson. He's the running back that I talked about earlier. I'm going to be interested in seeing what he does for the Kansas City Chiefs throughout training camp as well. So this is it for my Kansas City Chiefs 2019 training camp preview. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comment section down below. What are some things and some players that you guys are going to be looking forward to watching for the Kansas City Chiefs when their training camp begins? Also, make sure to like if you don't subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.